everyone, and welcome back to The Progressive Voice. I'm your host, Alicia Duque, as always. And today we have our political organizer here, Kristen Valchansky from Action Together NEPA. And we're going to be talking about the pro-voter agenda. So, Kristen, let's just get into it. What is the pro-voter agenda?
Sure. Thank you so much, Alicia. The pro-voter agenda is a document that we put together clearly stating the policies that we would like to see enacted at the county level to ensure that every registered voter can securely and fairly and freely vote in the election process and in the manner in which works best for them. So that includes things like accessible drop boxes, increasing the number of drop boxes in the county. I believe right now we have 4. We'd like to see that increase because the county is a large county. It's the size of Rhode Island. So accessible drop box access means that more people who live in more rural parts of the county would have a better chance of being able to participate in the electoral process. We have also asked for early voting sites, fully staffed polls. This is something that is not unique to Luzerne County. This is an issue in all 67 counties in Pennsylvania and across the nation. And it's absolutely wonderful that a lot of retirees, when they end their careers, decide to get involved in our democracy and become poll workers and poll watchers. But we need to get young people involved, so that we have more people participating in the process, learning how the process works, and that the process can be empowering and fun. We are also asking for increased training for poll staff and poll workers, and information being mailed to voting so that we can make sure that the process is easily understandable for every voter. And that includes language access for voters who speak Spanish, or in the case of Philadelphia County, speak Chinese and Mandarin, and are dealing with negotiating the process of voting in a language that is not familiar to them. And then the last couple points that we have asked for is one that has come up a lot in the last couple of weeks, which is to fully fund elections. Particularly in the last 2 years, a lot has been asked of county staff to be able to run a smooth election and keep the public safe, including having to move to bigger spaces where some polls did not allow for social distancing, cleaning those polls to make sure that the polling locations do not lead to an outbreak of COVID. And so that is one, and that all requires funding, that all requires money. So we have made that part of the pro-voter agenda. And then the last point is also to make sure that people feel safe and not intimidated when they go to the polls. And that has always been a very proud tradition in Pennsylvania, and something that we have all, both sides of the political persuasion, have always united around. And so we will continue to advocate for that in the future.
And why are these policies needed?
I would say that in the short term, they are very necessary for things like, for instance, the issue of funding. It takes a lot of money to run a election process secure, in a normal year, but then you add a pandemic on top of that, and you have a whole lot of work to do to make sure that there's social distancing, that there's PPE, that voting machines are being wiped down and cleaned. And so that all takes funding, because these people are, if they're employees of the Elections Bureau, they are employees of the county. They need to be paid their time for coming in and working just like any other employee. And often in an election cycle, around the time of an election, they are working overtime. And we saw in 2020 and in 2021 that a lot of counties did not have the funds they needed to be able to undertake an election. So we also have advocated for these policies because, if you work full time, and you need to get to the Board of Elections. Well, the Board of Elections closes at 4:30 and it opens at 8:30 in Luzerne County. That severely limits access for people who work full-time and decreases the likelihood that they are going to engage in the process, whether that is, going to the County Board of Election to get information so that they better understand the process, or choosing to vote early at the Board of Election, which you can legally do, or even curing their ballot. If for some reason there is a issue with the ballot and they need to cure it, which is the process of going in and verifying that, yes, you're a legal voter and you did submit that ballot, that all has to be done at the Bureau of Elections. So if you can't get there during work hours or before 4:30 in the afternoon, that's a significant obstacle to your ability to vote.
And how can voters then get involved in the election process?
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely a fantastic question. I think the true beauty of the system that we have in our democratic republic is that it is not centralized. Elections are run primarily by the states and then by the county. So we really rely on, everyday people in our communities to step up and, help in that electoral process and help, fulfill the process and the rights of our democracy to elect our leaders. So if you want to get involved, it's a very empowering thing to do, actually. You have a stake in this process. You have a voice in this process. You can go to your county website. You can apply to be a judge of elections. And that is actually a elected position, and they are at the polls on election day. And so are the poll workers. You can apply to be a poll worker and work the polls. You can be a poll watcher, which, is a volunteer position. So this is, I think the beauty of our system is it doesn't stand apart from us. It's in our communities, in our neighborhoods. The people who are at your poll on election day are just like you. They're just members of your community. And so we can all very easily get involved in this process and make sure that it is safe, secure, and inclusive of everybody.
I love that you said that there's different ways to get involved too. So you could be a poll watcher, you could volunteer different ways, you could actually work the poll. So there's many different ways to get involved. And I think people forget that too, of how to really get involved in this process. But why are these changes so important to the voters in the greater NEPA area?
In 2020, we all celebrated that voter participation was at a historic high. It was at a historic high. And I think we should be very proud of that. But that historic high was 60% of the population of people who legally can vote. And I think the more that we can do to empower voters and excite voters about their ability to shape their community's future and to have a say in who gets elected to represent them, then the more that we really truly become that democratic republic, that participatory democracy. And to be frank, there are some real obstacles for people to voting. If you live in the back mountain, you have to drive a real distance to return a mail-in ballot because your work schedule doesn't allow you to go to the polls on election day. That's a significant burden to your ability to exercise the freedom to vote. If you are a citizen of this country, but your primary language is not English, like my great-grandfather was an immigrant who his primary language was Ukrainian. That should not keep you from voting and being able to participate as a citizen in choosing the best future for your family, your community, your children. The Civil Rights Act says that any obstacle to voting that is not material to proving that the voter can vote is an undue burden on the voter. And we just had the Supreme Court reaffirm that. So we are asking for the county to put these policies in place to ensure that every voter has every opportunity to vote in the way that works best for them. And that includes, another example would be individuals who are disabled. You can fill out a form called a designated agent form and sign it and have it witnessed, and then somebody can carry your ballot to you so you can vote, and then they can carry it back. And that is the type of thing that we should be doing to make sure that everybody has a chance to determine their own future.
Absolutely, where everybody gets the chance to have their voice heard by voting. Yeah. So the pro voter calls for every voter having the freedom to vote in the way that's best for them. Can you explain that, like what that means and why is that so important?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had the really fortunate opportunity to talk to a lot of voters in the last couple of months, and there's some voters who really want to go to the polls on election day. It's a tradition for them. They make a kind of a celebratory process. They go with their family, they go with their kids. And if that's how you feel about voting in person, you should absolutely be able to vote in person. And then I've talked to voters who have said, what, I really like mail-in voting because I can sit down and I can research the candidates. I feel like I have more of an opportunity to make a more informed vote. There is nothing wrong with that. Every voter should be able to make that choice. And then there are other people who are like, I really like being able to use a drop box, or I really like being able to go into the county board of election before election day, fill out my ballot, my mail-in ballot, and return it right away. And that's the beauty of the system, is that we are allowing people to, make their voice heard in the way that best suits them, best works for them. And I should say, just as an aside, the mail-in voting that we currently have is not any different than the absentee system that we had before. It's the same ballot. It's generated in the same way when you go apply for it online, and it is, returned in the same way. So
if someone wants to support the pro voter agenda now, what can they do? What's the call to action?
Sure. Well, you could reach out to the Board of Election and thank them for supporting policies such as language access and Dropbox access, and then follow up and say, I really support these ideas. I'd like to see them enacted in my county. You can also become a poll watcher or poll worker, and work on election day and join the fun and be part of the process. It's a fascinating experience to work the polls and to see how elections work on the ground level. And I think it's kind of empowering because you get to see all these people come in and do something that we often take for granted, which is vote to elect who represents them. And so if you're interested in doing that, you can absolutely do that. You can also pursue becoming a judge of elections. And judges of elections kind of handle the more like legal side of questions about voting on election day and things that need to be adjudicated or determined. If you're interested in any of that, you can reach out to us at Action Together NEPA, and we could point you in the direction and the information that you need for your county to be able to do that. And I would really urge people to consider becoming a poll worker. These are really, really vital positions. In particular, they are employees of the county, so they are nonpartisan, and their sole purpose is these are the people, the frontline workers, if you will, who make sure that the election runs smoothly and securely.
So many things to consider there and so many ways to get involved. And also I want to throw out there, if you're not currently a member of Action Together NEPA, visit us at actiontogethernepa.org/become a member and become a member with us to not only get involved with the pro voter agenda, but also everything else that we are fighting for in the greater NEPA area. Kristen, thanks so much for being on the Progressive Voice today.
Oh, thank you so much, Alicia.
All right, bye.